Hi everyone! Today I'm going to talk about reporting verbs in ESL writing. Let's look at a short dialogue before the discussion starts. You know what? Xiaoming told me he's going to Italy next week. Really? But he said he wanted to go to Paris last weekend. If we look at the highlighted words told and said, these forms are fairly familiar to us when we report or summarize what others have said in spoken English. However, in academic writing of English, other descriptive and precise forms of reporting verbs are used more frequently. So in this video, we'll learn about the other types of reporting verbs and their usage in practice. The first question, why do we use reporting verbs in our papers? In academic writing, we often need to refer to the secondary sources or research of others, what we sometimes call textual borrowing. Reporting verbs are used when we want to refer to the research or ideas of the others by summarizing or paraphrasing. More specifically, reporting verbs can indicate either the author's personal viewpoint, your perspective regarding what the author says, and/or the author's perspective regarding other literatures. To interpret and reflect the writer's ideas accurately in our papers, we'll need to use a reporting verb with the correct form and sense of meaning in that given writing context. Before we look at reporting verbs from the perspective of their grammatical forms, I want to remind you that all reporting verbs are transitive verbs. In other words, a reporting verb must have a direct object, something or someone who received that action of the verb. This can be either a noun or a that clause. Some reporting verbs can take one, some the other, and some both. I conclude with 4 scenarios. First, some reporting verbs can be followed by a that clause, such as say, believe, claim, show, agree, suggest, and so on. Here are a few examples. It is safe to leave that right after the reporting verbs in this scenario. Of course, some of these reporting verbs also can be followed by a noun or noun phrase. I'll talk about this situation later. Here, pay attention to this sentence. The author argues the results of the study. We seldom use argue in this way, so be careful about it. The second scenario is that a noun complement follows a reporting verb. Such reporting verbs could be criticize, describe, identify, summarize, examine, or discuss. Let's look at 2 examples. Smith presents the causes of various environmental issues. The author identifies the correctness of spelling as an important indicator to judge whether an individual is thoughtless and inattentive to detail. Present and identify are followed by 2 nouns. But seldom do we say, Smith presents that the causes of various environmental issues have been found out. Present or this type of reporting verbs cannot be followed by a that clause. The third scenario is a little bit tricky. There are reporting verbs followed by both a that clause and a noun or noun phrase. Let's take acknowledge as an example. Black acknowledges that immigrants must learn English. Black acknowledges the importance of learning English for immigrants. Other phrases and nouns that could be used this way include argue, point out, explain, realize, assert, admit, maintain, and emphasize. We call the last one miscellaneous scenario, which means these verbs do not fall into any of the above categories. Some verbs can take other forms of noun complements or followed by a preposition. For example, Jones claimed what the other researchers discovered was inaccurate. He thinks when to start working matters. In these two sentences, what the other researchers discovered and when to start working are two noun complements, which look different from previous patterns apparently. The advantage is that your paper will look more colorful by writing sentences like this. Also, here, some reporting verbs work well with prepositions, such as accuse somebody of, apologize for, and contrast with. Look at the examples here. If you want to know the accurate usage of the variety of reporting verbs, looking up the online dictionary is one of the fastest ways. Longman Online Dictionary is what I usually use. Look at the examples following each usage of the verb in the dictionary, and it is more effective to grasp how to use that verb than just memorizing it. Additionally, we should also look at reporting verbs based on their meanings. For instance, if we want to present opinions, we usually use argue, assert, claim, contend, insist, maintain, state, imply, and so on. However, this doesn't mean that these words are perfect synonyms, a big no-no when we learn reporting verbs. This is also one of the difficulties with using reporting verbs. Though there are many, each of them has a slightly different and subtle meaning. In this chart, you can see the subtle differences in terms of argumentative strength among these frequently used reporting verbs. Be careful when we choose them, since the meaning and the strength of argument vary among each verb. For example, many students like to use claim when paraphrasing an author's perspective. Though reports what an author said, claim expresses my doubt about the author's statement, or others' doubts about the author's statement. Hence, assert denotes another layer of argument. Look at the example. Claire asserted that she did in fact turn in her assignment electronically, but that the computer failed to accept her file. By using assert, it conveys the message to the reader that initially there is some disagreement with the author's statement. Therefore, the author has to assert further to support her or his viewpoint. Okay, I'll not go over each reporting verb and examples one by one. Instead, I'd like to suggest pausing this video for a moment and reading through this chart. It will be very helpful to understand how to use these confusing reporting verbs accurately. In this chart, seem to argue and imply demonstrate what my interpretation of the author's point of view looks like. In another word, my interpretation could be either correct or incorrect from the author's perspective. It is my evaluation of the paper, though. Another reporting verb is suggest. When we use suggest, it means there is not sufficient evidence to support the argument. I, as a writer, am assuming based on the evidence from the author. So they are pretty weak in terms of the strength of argumentation. Also, state is a pretty neutral reporting verb in that it is just paraphrasing the facts in the article without much argumentative inclination in it. It means that the author really said that, but the writer may or may not agree. I hope these two charts give you some help in terms of the meanings of frequently used reporting verbs. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for watching.